Welcome to the Simple Minds podcast, where six mates unpack three topics over a new drink each week. Fuck it, just go with that. We'll fix it if it's...
We're off. Welcome to episode 11, Simple Minds podcast. 1-1. Justin here, I'm the host. I'll have the drink.
Started very smooth.
Way too self-conscious of his voice.
Yeah, some late night radio there, and then we dropped
All
it.
silence.
Yep. I listen to myself and I say too many ums, so I'm going to try.
And you say right too much.
right.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Come out
wow.
firing,
Yeah.
Michael.
Straight
Jeez.
off.
The BB gun is out of
I
it.
was just focusing on ums, now I have to focus on rights as well. There it is. So I have vino today. This is the first time we've had a vino on the podcast.
Ah, no, it's good.
Nice.
I was a little hesitant of what to get. Wasn't sure. Bit of pressure for the vino. So we have a Tempranillo from Spain, Vino Español. It is Castillo del Moro. I've never drank this before. I picked a Tempranillo because my wife and I drink it a bit. We drink a lot of vino, but I never take really any notice of what I'm drinking. So it was a bit of a just shooting in the blank, see what happens.
Smells lovely.
Sweet. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Hopefully this is a good one.
It's smooth. It's nice.
You've done well.
Not bad.
Really tasty.
Not bad.
Nice.
It was the last
Beauty, mate.
bottle in the rack, so
Ooh,
I
must
figured
be
that
good.
was a good omen out of all the others that were lined up. And
Oh, that's
yeah,
very nice.
enjoy. It's quite smooth
It is very smooth.
for an afternoon.
So who's here today, mate?
So today we're two regulars down again. Trav and Conrad can't be here. Today we have myself.
Michael, hello.
Marco, hello.
Matt.
And we have a special guest.
Andrew. My name's
Joining us
Andrew.
today.
Do you want me to introduce myself?
Nah.
Nah, don't
You
worry about
don't, you
it.
don't care,
Go
right?
for it. You got 15 seconds. Go.
You'd be the only one on the podcast who's ever introduced themselves.
Yes.
Not even-
Yeah,
we
we haven't introduced ourselves.
Andrew, what is your why?
Oh, indeed.
only
Jeez. Can I come back later?
No, go on. Give us the 15 to 25 second.
Alright, my name's Andrew Murphy. I run a video production company called Arise Digital, and we specialise in cinematic video production and professional photography.
Nice.
Done.
Boom.
Have a good week, guys.
See you.
I'll you later.
You're out.
Sounds well rehearsed. Do you like long walks on the beach? Or
That's my elevator pitch, actually.
long
That's
walks
good.
on the
I
beach?
like
No, definitely not. I'll start with this one. I was actually thinking on the way here, I was like, what can I think that's actually going to be funny? And now it doesn't really make sense because I've already done it. But I was going to say, hey guys, long time editor and producer, first time caller.
Well, it's true, right?
It is true.
Well, involved from the start.
Andrew has been involved from the start. He's been helping us out with gear and some editing.
Yeah,
so
this
is true.
thanks.
Been
Yeah.
very good.
We appreciate your time, and you now can join in.
So is Arise... Hang on, sorry. Is Arise... How many people in Arise?
It's 2 at the moment.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Who else is in it?
So myself and my partner.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
So she just helps with like social media and whatnot.
Yeah, sweet.
Okay.
So it keeps on top of things for me.
I'm
Sick.
sure she does.
And on content today we have Marco, Matt, and Andy, the guest. Yeah.
Go on, gonna
I
go
like a
deep.
bit
We're
of
gonna
guest
go deep.
content.
We're gonna go deep.
Guest.
So
Challenge accepted.
I think off the rank, Marco.
Yep.
Let's
So
go.
mine follows... I'm pretty excited to chat about this because it ties quite closely to some content that Trav brought a little while ago, which was the love buckets. And I actually found that really useful because I spent a lot of time thinking about myself and what fills up my love buckets, but then also what I thought other people's were, and then tailored some interactions with people based on whether I was acknowledging lack of it or whether they may need more of certain things. And so when I came across this bit of content, which was, I found it while listening to the Tony Robbins podcast, and a lady called Gretchen Rubin was being interviewed, and she's the author of a book called The Four Tendencies. It's essentially, The Four Tendencies is an identity quiz that she's come up with, and the four tendencies look at something very narrow but significant, and that is how we respond to expectations. The reason this is cool is because we talk a lot about forming habits in this show and just in general at 7am Brekkie. And this is a cool way of reflecting on yourself on how you can form habits, if that's what you want to do, but then also how you can drive change in behaviours or motivate yourself. So I will start with what the 4 tendencies are, and then the question will be, what do you think you are? How do you think you can better deal with the different types of tendencies? And I know Justin's even applied this already because we had a chat about it the other week. He's already had a look at his staff and is thinking about how he can better interact with them. So the 4 tendencies are, one more bit of context, which is they look at how we respond to expectations, and there are 2 buckets of expectations: inner expectations and outer expectations. So depending on which ones you emphasize and deliver best against, classifies you with these 4 personality types. So they are upholder, obliger, questioner, and rebel. Okay? So the upholder is someone that balances very well between outer and inner expectations. So they...
Can you define, when you say inner and outer, is that sort of what people think, what were your expectations of what people think of you, and internally what you think of yourself? Is that...
Yeah, not so much what you think of yourself, but what are you driven to deliver against, right?
Okay.
So are you someone that's really good at following through on New Year's resolutions?
Okay, yeah. Yep.
Or do you need outer accountability in order to drive that behaviour?
Got it.
Okay, so if you're an upholder, the definition is you are very self-aware of your inner expectations, and you use them and balance them out with outer expectations.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
A questioner resists outer expectations and meets inner expectations. Okay, so they make everything internal, and they will do things as long as they make sense to them. Okay, that's a questioner. An obliger is someone that meets outer expectations readily, but very much struggles to meet inner expectations. Okay, and they suffer from a frustration of thinking that they always meet everyone else's needs, but never come round to doing their internal things.
Yep.
And a rebel resists both. Okay, so outer expectations and inner expectations. They like to keep it completely fast and loose, don't like regimen, and like to keep optionality at all times. So the question for me is, listening to those, and I can go into a bit more detail of them, what do you think that you are? And then based on that, how do you think the best interaction is, or how can you best tailor your interactions with different people based on identifying what you think they are? Or if you look at it personally, how do you drive habits yourself? So I can kick off while people have a bit of a think. Or Justin, do you want to go actually? Because you've had some time to think about this.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I listened to the podcast as well, which I thought was great. And I think something to add on is that, I think she categorizes everyone into these 4 groups. So within the 4 groups, you can be all sorts of introverts, extroverts, and all the other type of things that,
So you got little
talk
bits
about.
of kind of everything in
so
there.
it's just literally expectations, almost like motivation bucket to a degree, right?
Yeah.
I thought, and that's what your interest to it was.
Yeah.
And I was listening to it, you told me about it, and I thought I might have been a questioner, but I realized I was probably more an obliger, which obliger from the explanations is someone who works well to external kind of expectations, i.e. I work really well to deadlines or gym, knowing that it's locked in and going to classes gets me going, where on my own I struggle to go unless the habit has already been built. And but then I also thought I might have been a bit of a questioner, and a questioner, a good example they did in the podcast was like, you won't do something if you don't understand why you think it's pointless, like even simple things, which was one of like crossing the street when it's the green man or a red man. An upholder will only cross when it's green or red, like when it's green.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Even if
there's
logically, there's no one around, they will go when it's green.
Obliger.
No, that'd be an upholder.
Okay.
I believe, anyways.
Yeah, right.
Another debate. Where a questioner would be like, I don't get why there's no one around. I'm just going to, why do I need to wait on the red? I'm just going to go. It doesn't make any sense to cross at the thing. And so that's how I took it. Questioner, and challenges kind of has to understand the why. And so from there, I had an interesting conversation. I do one-on-ones with my team members, as I've shared. And one of the guys asked me, why do you do these? Why do you care? Why do you do this? Like at the end of it, and it was only 2 days after I listened to this podcast, and I was like, boom, this guy is a questioner. Because no one else has challenged me on why I do one-on-ones. And it was just an interesting observation. And then it got me going, am I really a questioner or obliger? And when I look back throughout, I guess, all of my things, I'm really an obliger. When there's an external expectation put on me, I get shit done.
Yeah.
If I need to do something that's there, I won't do it. Where an upholder will do it. Like if you've got a checklist of things to do by X dates, from my understanding, an upholder will just execute.
Yeah.
Where for me, I'll put it off until there's a reason for it to be done. So like client deadlines, I perform much better closer to the deadline.
So it's
3 weeks.
Like, it's just to cut in. It's sort of an awareness thing, right? So because, like I've noticed with you in particular, you then if you have that awareness of who you are, you can then quickly structure those deadlines in place to sort of achieve the outcomes that you're looking to achieve.
And that's what they refer to in the podcast. Is that so? The other thing is 75 or 80%, some huge number. The majority of people are obligers. The majority of the population are obligers. The next majority is questioners. And then the minority is kind of on the edges, which is rebels. And then rebels is the smallest. Upholders.
And closely followed by
upholders.
And just where she gets those numbers from, somewhere 1 million plus people have taken this quiz that you can take to essentially categorize yourself. It takes like 5 minutes, but once you've heard the definitions and made I sat the quiz today after having listened to this podcast a few times. I basically was answering all the questions towards what I thought I was anyway. So like,
the other
not so
ironic
much
thing
point.
is that, like, if a million is a huge number, I don't disagree with that, but that million will be warped too. People
absolutely.
are already in this frame of mind, looking for and seeking out.
But I think it makes sense. Like most people, it just makes sense that most people are obligers. They react. Most people are typically more reactive to external accountability. I think.
Yeah. And that's what it comes down to. And then that's what she acknowledges, that the majority of people fail to accept that they're an obliger and don't want to have the external accountability, yet even though that motivates them, it's kind of like your ego gets in the way to go, actually, I need someone to keep me accountable for this thing or that thing. And that actually holds a lot of people back. And yes, it's something I've learned in the last couple of years. I need external accountability. I think so. I'm an obliger. A couple of my team members I've started to try and test. One is a clear questioner.
Any rebels? Any rebels?
I'm not sure about rebels yet.
I think you would know if you had a rebel in your midst, I would have thought.
Would you, Bob?
Oh, no, I think you would. I think you're right. Because that's a small percentage. And that sounds like that's a personality trait of
that
people
you'd pick
quickly,
I would have
know.
thought.
Yeah, I think you would. And the one interesting thing was that there's no real personality. There's no real traits, like personality traits that apply to each of the 4 tendencies. It's literally irrelevant. Just how what do you respond better to in terms of internal and external expectations.
Because I think they touched on some famous people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she thought Roger Federer was...
No, Andre Agassi,
sorry. Obliger.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, questioner.
Yep.
Hermione Granger, upholder.
So you can...
Rebel, they use Donald Trump as an example.
Don't know if,
Do you think, like... I mean, I haven't listened to it, haven't sort of looked at it in more detail, but how much of that do you think is environmental and like sort of trained as we've grown, through our childhood and even into adulthood, versus just a natural tendency? Like, I feel like a lot of the obliger in us has been drilled out, like through school, through through life.
Has been drilled out.
Sorry,
I thought it would have been drilled in.
sorry, I don't know what I was going to do. Yeah, drilled in. So drilled into us. I'm
Yeah.
not like, so when I said out, I think that's the bit that gets pulled out of our personality. Like we all have a bit of rebel, we all have a bit of different things in us, but I think that's what gets pulled out because we get, as we move through different phases, the standard sort of expectation on us is to, and you create these things, like even just the Great Australian Dream of then owning a home creates that obliger because you get flipped into this 30-year mortgage payment cycle. Like we sort of, our standard society builds out enough things to be pulling us forward. Like dangling the carrot in front of us that we just have to keep walking towards and growing.
So I guess the question is, what do you think you are?
I probably would agree with sit in the obliger space. Like I could definitely say I question things at times, but it wouldn't be the most dominant. The most dominant would still sit with obliger. If I'm meant to be somewhere, if I have a calendar event that is second in importance to something that should be done, I will be at the calendar event. I'll be doing what I think, or what I've pre-planned and committed to in that sense, whether that's a client, whether that's family, whatever it looks like. So I definitely still think I would lead with the obliger.
Okay.
I think we should all strive to be questioners, something to strive for. Is that to take control?
No.
See, I'm getting mixed up with the definitions now.
It's
So
not
what about the person that can make the decisions themselves without?
No,
who's that?
because the questioner, it's how you. It's essentially motivation.
Yeah.
Right.
But the person is self-motivated then.
So this is motivation tech. I'm self-motivated, but I'm still an obliger.
Yeah, but which one is the real self-motivator in this?
So you can be self-motivated in any of them.
Yeah, and that's the really interesting thing that I find.
But it's the external.
Yeah. So what gets
stimulus?
What gets you to move? Like, do you? For example, is your external expectations on yourself higher than the external? So, for example, if you said you were going to do X or Y, an upholder will do it. Whereas if
so upholder is the guy was meaning then.
And an obliger will be someone that says like, I'm going to do this, and then they get to it and they're like, But if then there's, I'm going to do this with that person, I'm going to do it for this thing or that thing, there's a higher chance of them taking action on it. That's my understanding.
Well, that's what I am.
And
I'm definitely like, that's what you were as well.
And and then the questioner is like, that's both of those two things are cool, but I'm not going to do anything until I understand the reason for it, no matter whatever it is.
Yeah.
Even if there's a client deadline, I'm not going to hit that deadline if I know the reason why there's that deadline.
Yep.
That's my understanding of the tendencies. So you can be either or.
Can you, from your understanding, can you elaborate the rebel a little bit more? Because I would...
So the rebel from there, which, I don't know if Marco, sorry. I'm taking over.
No, go for
Do you
it.
want to explain?
So rebel comes from a place of always wanting choice and freedom and to always be self-expressive. So, and a rebel doesn't even like locking into a gym session themselves, right? So if their objective was to get fit, they might look at all of the different classes in the area and all of the gym schedules, and each day, depending on their mood, pick something that fits their current mood. So they like to preserve optionality and they like to be self-expressive. So that's a rebel.
Okay.
I find this really fascinating because when you guys were all saying you would easily pick a rebel, I was kind of questioning that because it's like, how do you know what their internal motivation is without being them? So how do you know, like Marco was saying,
that's exactly right.
Each day they might choose, each gym, but you might think, oh, they've planned to go, okay, I'm going to try out different gyms.
I think if they were in your team, they would appear to either lack organisation or something else, or they'd appear erratic. I think.
So this is a really important point because you can't base it on their characteristics externally. You have to understand how they think. Right? So in order for you, say you're judging it within your teams, you really have to intimately know how your team thinks. And I just want to go back to Michael's point. The reason I went into this is, again, I'm going down a lot of self-awareness stuff, right? There is no best out of them, right? It is just understanding your motivators. And everyone, even if you respond best, so say you're an obliger, even if you respond best to external expectations, you should still spend time understanding what your internal expectations are, and then set up the external accountability structures to achieve those internal expectations, right? Because you don't want to be resenting other people's expectations because you're saying, oh, if I were to if they didn't have their expectations, I'd be able to tick off my bucket list. That's not the
And
thing.
a good
So
example
using
of that,
them as an excuse
You,
to...
you just set that structure up, and you get your own stuff done through them.
And a good example of that is like for me going to the gym. I want to get fitter and healthier, right? And that's an internal expectation on myself. But in order for me to achieve that, I've signed up to a gym where there's a rigid schedule that I need to attend and be at. Therefore, I'm using the external accountability to satisfy my internal expectation.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely transitioned, I reckon, over the last little while into somebody that tries to take it on themselves a little bit more.
Okay.
To take control of your own expectations, getting fit, reading, learning, and sort of taking that on myself and not letting anybody else dictate that, I suppose, which has been quite powerful, which I think is quite powerful. But I'm definitely
You're a rebel.
No, not at all. 'Cause I'm definitely
Because it's structured right? You're just taking ownership control.
Ownership,
so you're
yeah,
quite
definitely,
structured in what you do,
Yeah.
but you've tried to make it more of an intrinsic
But
motivator.
I definitely work well with, like yourself, Justin, accountability on the outside or deadlines coming up. I work much better when I know something needs to be done as well.
So you think
So you
obliger?
might be an obliger?
Yeah.
Well, I think
yeah.
the other point is that probably in different facets of our life,
I think
we
so.
do approach it like
For sure.
So you might see someone that's all over the place in their life, but they're phenomenally accurate and rigid with their workouts.
See, I'm a bit the opposite. I'm
So-
sort of in my life. I'm a little bit more structured and self-disciplined, but in work, because I work by myself as well, which is a bit hard. I don't have that accountability beside me, which is why I'm looking at expanding this year because I need that kind of challenge. So that's why. Yeah, I mean, my clients are my expectation now, and I will work to them and do anything for them. But it will creep up to deadlines,
But
and then it will kick in.
Would it be say there is a natural tendency?
There is
and then you can build in self habits, which become habits, which then the internal intrinsic takes over, right?
And it's for me, it's a tool to build habits in whatever area of your life. So if you want to break it down into, say, work or fitness or whatever, then you just apply these 4 lenses in that area and understand what motivates you to get it done and put the structure around it to achieve your internal expectations. The love buckets is really general. This one I find you can still be quite general, but you've got probably more applicable to go one step down. So we're basically done with time for this one.
I'm
But
gonna
I just didn't hear Andrews.
I originally wrote down obliger, and I'm feeling like I'm turning into a questioner. But mine was mine was all based on other people's opinion of me rather than what motivates me to do stuff. So listening to what Justin was saying, I'd say I'm definitely an obliger. And this is like, because we're both in the creative field, obviously. Like literally, if someone comes to me with a project and they're like, "Can we make a video?" It's like, cool, and nothing happens. And then if they go, "Can we make a video about this specific topic?" and my brain starts running, and then they're like, "Can we get it by this time?" And it's like, "Yep, cool," and everything gets set in place. But literally, if you come to me and go, "Can we make a video in the next 12 months?" It's like literally nothing happens in my brain. Because I need that
external
deadline, and I need that input to then like almost like kickstart my brain and get it going.
Yeah.
What were you, Marco?
I think I'm an upholder.
Upholder?
Yeah.
That was my initial...
For yourself
No,
or for
for
me?
you.
Oh, yeah, okay.
When we were talking about it.
Yeah. I actually flicked to obliger after hearing you just readily be like, yeah, no, I'm totally an obliger. But then having a little bit more of a thing. There are certain aspects in time or certain points in time where it doesn't matter what external expectations are. I will just go and execute on what I want, and it's quite...
That could be passion driven as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It? Like
but it's quite constant in terms of balancing between the two. So I think I'm an upholder. I wanted to round out on this one. One of the cool things that I found... Oh, yeah, no. Just one extra thought, which was to summarise. The 4 types are, and the discussion points from each of the participants were...
We're going to put that test, though, into the show notes.
Yeah, and I'll link the podcast. This is cool because I think a lot of leadership rhetoric gets forced down of making everyone understand that you have to lead through the why, right? This flips that and goes, actually, only a certain percentage of your team, or the people that you have to influence and motivate, are going to be motivated by the why. Other people are going to be motivated by the accountability. Other people are just going to need to be reminded of who they are and their role. So they're the rebels. And the upholders, that we didn't really go much into that personality type, but I thought that was really cool. So I definitely recommend checking out this
Definitely have a
podcast.
good deep
It's
on that one
really,
for sure,
really,
yeah.
really useful. I've done a lot of self-reflection on it, so
Nice.
that was that for this week.
It'd be interesting to do the test, like maybe like wait a couple of weeks and do the test,
Yeah,
and then
Yeah.
see if it actually is what you thought it was.
It's a
Yeah, I
little bit
wonder,
similar.
I wonder if it changes over time.
Yeah.
The test is really, really basic. It takes
Yeah.
like 5 minutes. You're gonna self-fulfill it. I'm
See,
pretty
the
sure.
only way I'll do that is if I put a calendar.
Well, if you really
that's
want
a
to
great
do
idea.
it,
That's a great idea. But like, if I wanted to say do it in 2 weeks, yeah, it would fall off. And
Yeah.
I think that's the point, right?
Yeah.
We've done a few of these self-reflection questions, haven't we? Are we the lion, the camel, the child,
Yeah.
the uplifter, the
I
question?
think they work well.
They're really good, yeah.
Yeah.
Really good.
No,
But
that's
self-reflection, isn't it? It's
Self-awareness.
And it's very hard.
That's
to,
my
yeah.
track for this period of time, I guess.
That's it. That's it.
Sweet. So, I think I'm up for the next topic, and I thought I'd try something a little different. So, all of us are, we're avid readers, we're avid consumers of like all types of content, written, audio, video, the whole lot. If there was another medium, we'd be going there too.
Yeah.
But one thing I realised.
VR.
There are other ones.
Well, that
Psychedelics.
it's still psychedelics, VR, we can start to add those into the equation. But for the most part, civilization has operated under written word, video, and audio. I read a ton, as does everyone here. What I don't do very often is read fiction.
Ooh,
Mhm.
okay. Yep.
So I thought it might be interesting to go around the table and find out what is the most recent fiction book that has been consumed, with the absolute exception of The
Oh,
Alchemist.
that was my answer! Yeah, no. No, peaks and valleys. Boom! Yes.
I was about
And
to go.
Peaks and Valleys, because
Oh,
we've
man.
discussed
I'm
it
out.
I'm looking.
substantially.
Look.
We did talk
yeah.
about that. I think we should come back to Peaks and Valleys. So maybe
Yeah.
let's make a mental note for someone's topic just to be forced down to go Peaks and Valleys. I think that'll be too long. So I'd want to just talk around, some fiction.
Actually, I'll do it.
Those two are probably the big ones that we've read. And I've read some other short stories, but I realised for a proper legitimate fiction book, it probably dates almost 24 months back since I've actually read a complete fiction book. That
I'm
wasn't
looking back, it's ages since I've fully read and got
Yeah.
immersed into a
fiction
book, which is
So-
pretty bad, really, isn't it?
Mine is The FountainHead by Iain Rand, which is quite a heavy book, which is even more incredible that I was able to read the whole thing. But it's a super award-winning book.
Like
Justin-
content heavy, right?
Look,
It actually looks
Justin
quite heavy as
Moore.
well.
It's like 3,000 pages of tiny text. Justin's holding the book. I actually gifted this book to Justin not so long ago.
I read like.
Never opened it.
I did actually.
Oh, you did?
It's an award-winning book.
Having closed it really quick. It's like this really small text.
So some context. That's it's a massive award-winning book. It's something I think they even do like analyse through school and that type of thing in the US. It's Mark Cuban's book is called The FountainHead,
Okay.
and it's a tale of a young architect's battle against conventional standards. And there's sort of this young architect and a secondary architect, and you sort of follow their tale as he goes through, love, as he goes through and navigates. He's based in New York. He wants to build. He's designing these phenomenal new buildings with new design, and the convention is no boxes. There's a real. He's got this design and flair and all these creative ideas that he sort of wants to just continue along the path of sort of elevating, I guess, all society and design and everything he's coming up with, and he sort of keeps like running into roadblocks all the way. But he's very much, I guess, if you fall back on what we just talked about, he's probably almost a rebel, in that he just continues on his path. Is it rebel or is it what was the internal?
Questioner is all internal. Everything has to make sense to them.
Yeah.
Upholder is a balance between the two.
It's probably sits between a questioner and a rebel.
Is he on the hero's journey? Is that his?
Oh, absolutely. Wait, there is actually 700 plus pages
Jesus,
of tiny
really
text of hero's journey.
Wow.
And so it's really interesting in that standpoint, his quest to just be the best he can be under his terms, and comes up against all sorts of things in the process. So
Okay.
amazing book. I love the book. I didn't just sit down and read it in one go. It took me a while to get through it. But I realised not so long ago, it was that other podcast, and it might have even been Tim Ferriss, that I don't read fiction almost at all. And there's actually some quite good fiction stories. And like what I do consume anyways is stories. It's just I tend to like them to be real. So I've probably bought enough time.
Well, civilization's built on stories, yeah. I mean, that's where it all came from that initial mammoth painted on the cave, you know.
Yeah.
It's in our DNA.
That's right. So, it's really interesting. So, Mike Sinner, you've commented there, and you seem very organised in your approach to finding what you've read. What's the last fiction book you've read?
Well, there's a few by the same author that in the course of probably about a year I read 2 or 3 of his books. I've always been into science fiction. Not really as a kid reading science fiction, but watching it, obviously. I'm in the Star Wars era and all that, so science fiction's always been a massive part of my life. But from a novel point of view, from reading, Iain Banks. Have you heard of Iain Banks?
No, I haven't.
A Scottish author who's written a book. He's like a series of books based on The Culture, which is I can't even think of when it's set, but it's like thousands of years in the future. But he has created a galaxy of amazing like descriptions and worlds and politics, everything. Like quite amazing how detailed it is throughout the novels. And the last one I read was called The Player of the Games, which mind-blowing stuff. So as I said, it's been a couple of years since I read it, so I can't.
Yeah. So one other question I guess I had was, and I guess this would be good for everyone. Was it pure entertainment? Or did you learn something from it?
Oh, I learned a lot. It was a trip into what the future could hold, maybe.
Yeah.
And just his descriptive, the way he built that world in detail was just mind-blowing to me. So it opened up my mind there. And I love science fiction for that sort of thing, you know, that just sort of... And there's a new, actually, I was talking at Bricky the other day, a Netflix show called Altered Carbon that's just come out, which is science fiction, and it's that next step where thinking about your life and are we living in a virtual reality, you know, what's real, what's not real, that sort of thing. So questioning, it's a philosophy thing as well. It's getting the head thinking about what's possible. And that's why I love science fiction, and yeah, Iain Banks' books are amazing for that. Really good fact, or not fact, but a question in regards to fiction, in regards to virtual reality or being in a simulation. The chance of there being in the future really good VR and living in a simulation is pretty high, right? It's something like 80% chance that is actually going to happen. Like people will be sitting in different worlds, and because of that fact, it's more chance that we are now sitting in a simulation now than being in real life, because of the actual fact that it is going to be possible in the future. So there you go.
Did you quote that as a fact though?
Yeah, I did,
or just
yeah.
a trippy thought? Because I don't know.
No, I've heard on a couple of people describing it on a couple of different podcasts. And it's a really interesting.
Was it on the Metabytes podcast?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. But that's just a really interesting way to think. Isn't it?
Drug test in my head.
That's Michael. That's a
Possibility of a simulation is really high, and if that is right, the possibility that you are the percentage that you are currently in one.
Someone adjusting the drug test results?
Hey, come on! I'm trying to make a point.
No, I'm with you. I'm saying, no, I was actually giving you a little plug for your the podcast.
Metabytes, thank you. Yes, little 10-minute bites of absolute genius.
Have you read, Andrew? Have you read any?
Disappoint you so bad.
Do it. It's going to be great.
I do not even remember the last time.
Actually, I read The Lion King last night. Does that count?
So you're...
I'm more of a visual consumer.
Okay.
So I honestly, the last time I read a fiction book, the only one that's coming to mind, because I've got a terrible memory, is I think I was like in year 6 or 7, and I read one of the Matthew Riley books. But like,
they're like teeny sort of adventure things.
Yeah, it's a lot around like secret agents. Choose your adventure. No, it's like around like secret agents and that kind of stuff. But I honestly can't remember exactly what it was about. But like that is the only kind
that's
of
interesting,
fiction.
right? Because I part of what I was thinking about was I love to just watch movies, and often they're very similar in their overall context and theme. But that's where I tend to just zone out and consume some fiction.
Yeah.
I don't do it in books, and you basically not done one. You know, you're talking over a decade since you've put out a fiction book and put any time into it, because you're very much the same. You like to consume audio.
Yeah, and
audio visual.
I literally haven't even thought about reading a fiction book.
Yeah. I'm the same, and the only fiction books that I've read, well, I've only started reading in the last 24 months. I haven't read for years, never read as a kid, hated it. I would always prefer to draw or watch or play a video game. Anything other than read.
Reading.
Yeah.
I
My
really
son's
dislike
very like that,
reading. And other than The Alchemist, Peaks and Valleys, luckily I do have one extra, but it's pretty much similar to the other two, which is The 5 People You Meet in Heaven,
Okay.
which was a very cool book, but it's a fable similar to the others,
That's all right.
which is... and that was the only reason I was interested in that was, again, more self-development or growth. Otherwise, I don't have much interest in fiction
Just to
books.
disappear
Yeah,
into
I'd much rather spend my time watching a movie or, as I've touched on, playing PUBG or something else.
That's literally exactly the same as me. But like every single time I go to either buy or read a book, it's like, how is this going to benefit me in some way? Not like, let's just do it for fun. Because because I'm such a visual learner, I'd rather watch a movie and get that in like an hour or 2 hours rather than spending
Well, how old are you, Andrew?
25.
25, and you're
28.
28. You young whippersnappers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very right.
And so it's like when a book is released, like Game of Thrones, I'll watch it.
But,
It's so much easier and it's so much more time efficient. Like,
Yeah.
but I, like, you know, we all have pretty active brains because we like to, we're busy, but then we're also consuming a lot of content and that as well. And I've heard a lot of people talk about just literally any fiction, just picking up some fiction and reading as the sort of last thing you do to try and zone out some of the constant brain activity, that we keep feeding in, which is, I think all of us are more or less on a quest to consume as much as possible and to do as much as possible all the time. And this is a way that you can sort of consume a story without a screen. And actually, that's probably why I even picked this book up in the first place. Otherwise, I'd more or less be sitting in the same space. Like, I have no idea what I read last, and I would have almost been an external factor which pushed me to read it.
Yeah.
So what do you think,
Marco.
Marco?
Well, I think that based on your content last week and then this week, you're just finding excuses to watch and read fantasy and fiction. Because last week
Disney
you were talking
movies.
about
Well, I
Disney
haven't read it in
movies.
2 years.
Yes.
The Disney movies, yeah.
But so does listening to an audiobook count? Or you have to have
Well,
read it?
that was audiobook for me.
Yeah,
The 5
okay.
People in Heaven was audiobook.
Yeah, I didn't specify that. Like, it was more about the consumption of a narrative, which is just made up.
Okay. So I think then I really struggled to come up with this, but within the last year, I listened to a book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And it's essentially, it's a self-help book, but that got recommended to me. And it's a story of a chance meeting of a service station attendant who becomes a spiritual teacher to a young gymnast who goes through injury and then recovery, falls in love, has his heart broken, and essentially just goes through the hero's journey.
Okay.
But I think Conrad would have been really interesting to have in this because he reads a lot of fiction.
Well, the 5 People You Meet in Heaven, it was recommended by Conrad.
Yeah.
Should we call it?
Sorry.
Conrad.
Probably.
He would love that.
And that book was interesting. I mean, in summary, it was and it was so connected to the other stuff that we read, which is that you have an influence and impact on everyone. And the people he meets in heaven, he doesn't even know half of them, but he's connected through with their life and your life. So, your influence can go a long way, even though you don't know it. And the main character is an old guy, war veteran, who is the maintenance man of a theme park. And he's influenced throughout that, even though he was grumpy and hated his kind of job. He influenced so many people. It's a super fascinating book.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
In that, it gets you thinking of kind of the ripple effect of throwing a stone in a lake and how many people, by doing one thing, you can kind of influence. So it was super fiction. The audiobook's cool because the author puts on different accents for the characters and the people, so there's different tones.
Yeah.
And he tries to talk when he's the old man. He's talking a bit like this, and it's good. But it's audiobook. You gonna call Conrad?
Oh, was I on?
Can I quickly flip this? Because I'm such a visual learner, and obviously a lot of stuff I do is visual, and pretty much it's the exact opposite. So everything I watch is pretty much fiction. And then I very rarely watch stuff that is, say, like documentary or real life. So can I quickly flip this, just because that's the way I learn. The last kind of documentary thing I watched was the Walt Disney one about how he like kind of grew up and all the challenges he went through. So I thought that was a really, really good movie to watch.
Walt Disney's a pretty crazy story.
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
Conrad, how are you? Very good. You're live on. Oh, well, you're not live, but you're being recorded on the podcast right now. Just a quick one for you. What was the last fiction book that you read? So not non-fiction, sort of self-awareness type learning stuff, but the last fiction that you read.
It was a Dan Brown book, and it would have been Inferno.
Inferno by Dan Brown, yeah?
By Dan Brown.
Okay. Did you get much out of that?
I love Dan Brown. He's a great history with a good story. So I think it must be a non-fiction book. It has got a lot of facts in it.
No worries. Cool. That was one of the questions. We're going to let you go now, but it's lovely speaking to you.
So I think if I'm going to read non-fiction, then it's going to have to tick that box in there.
Nice, man. Thank you for that. We're going to let you go.
No problem.
Hey, you're breaking up. Bad reception here.
Take care, mate. Bye.
Super controversial comment, but I was hoping it'd be like the Bible or something.
That in my mind, I was like,
Biggest fiction book of all time. Lost that one.
We just lost all. No.
Hey, you got a bit fantasy, Matt. That's 2 in a row. Pixar.
Dan Brown. I wouldn't have picked
Disney.
that for a Connor.
Dan Brown.
Dan Brown.
No idea.
Brown.
He was the
That's
Da Vinci Code
That's
dude.
the Da
yeah?
Vinci Code. There's actually that big fat book is sitting there on my bookshelf. I should this one here, my one at home.
So I may have missed this, but your reason for bringing this up was because you are now going to be reading some more fiction in order to switch off, or because you're going to be reading fiction to learn life lessons from it, or why did you bring it up?
To be completely honest, I brought it up because I was looking for a bit of a change of pace, something different in terms of a question to ask. But it has been on my mind for a little while that there's actually some amazing art out there in the form of written words. I read a lot. We all read and listen to a lot of content. And I figure there's a lot of story. A lot of what I consume in non-fiction is just stories, and some incredible stories can you learn from as well. So I think there was a couple of things. One, I've seen it and heard it a fair bit recently, more of a productivity / a hack on how to just quieten your mind a little bit by reading fiction instead of like listening to Gary Vee in your last 15 minutes before you go to sleep, because that means you don't sleep too well by doing that. But
Or watching a Netflix series where you binge watch.
yeah, and so that's not good. So I'd probably like to do more, and I guess it was just something that's been apparent. I haven't done that because I haven't read another book for another couple of years. But I did download a book on my phone. Unfortunately, my phone's in the other room, I'd love to pick the reference up. We could probably put it in some notes somewhere. But it was an audio book of much the same. It was still an entrepreneur's type journey, but it was apparently just a crazy, amazingly written, piece of fiction. And I think just having the perception that it is fiction just allows it to not just allows you to more superficially consume it, which is what I like to do with video, obviously, but I haven't done something written, so that was really the catalyst for the question.
Okay,
Good.
Awesome.
And I'm really pumped to hear about this amazing third topic.
Yeah.
Andrew's going to blow our minds.
All right.
What we said.
Gonna go deep, guys.
All right.
So, I'll tell you the story behind it because it's actually quite interesting. So last weekend, it would have been last weekend. So I went down south for a wedding for my friend's wedding to shoot that. So I was driving down on the Saturday morning and I was actually listening to the Simple Minds podcast. So I was doing some consumption and was kind of listening to, I can't remember exactly which ones I listened to. I was kind of, what's annoying is that when you listen to it, if a new one comes out, when I click on it, it automatically starts to the latest one.
Yeah, okay.
So I was kind of listening to like the end of
The
whatever
thing is,
was
they're all
left.
so good. It's really hard to like pick which one you're listening to.
we're all chuckling, everybody. It's okay. We are definitely pulling the piss here.
The love languages one, but that one was really powerful and kind of really resonated with me. But yeah, so as I was listening to it, I was kind of thinking about, like what kind of things could I potentially bring up if I was to come on the show, which thank you for bringing me on the show.
Which you manifested whilst driving
That's
down
right,
there.
create
obviously.
your own destiny.
Absolutely. So the question I want to ask you today,
You're scared.
I'm
You're
going to
nervous
say,
to bring this up.
I don't want to say basic, but it's only 3 words. So what I would like to do is pose the question and then get a bit of a really brief understanding of what you understand or to interpret it as, and then kind of open up for
Okay.
discussion.
Okay.
So the question is, what is the purpose of meaning? So
That's not 3 words.
purpose of meaning is the 3 words. So
Purpose of me.
meaning.
Meaning.
Yeah. So I'll
What is the meaning of life? Is this
So-
what we're going down sort of?
So I'll kind of elaborate kind of why this came up. So obviously, at the moment, I'm doing quite a lot of personal development. I've done some courses recently where they kind of talk a lot about meaning and what your interpretation of meaning is and all this kind of stuff. So it kind of came up. There was a few different ways I thought about it, and this is kind of how I thought that would be the most easiest to digest.
Yep.
It is quite deep, but the easiest way to get it so then you can start thinking about it, obviously. So for me, and especially since doing this course, my big thing is that meaning is purposeless. For me personally anyway. So the way I interpret that is that, say if something happens, so say if you got embarrassed or something, so your embarrassment is the meaning that you're putting on what happened. And for me, that doesn't serve a purpose because it's just, a lot of the time our meaning makes it a negative experience for us. So like being embarrassed, you feel, self-empowered, all this kind of stuff. So the meaning that you put on it actually isn't a negative to kind of how you're feeling. So that's why I kind of really want to get your interpretation of that. So for me, I try to live my life now by not putting purpose on meaning, and just kind of, when stuff happens, just take it as it is and then kind of put it aside, move on and go from there.
Well, it's funny touch on that. The Daily Stoic today was essentially that, which is how many people talk about you behind your back or say bad things about you or do this or that, and you don't get upset about because you don't know about it. It's once you know about it, which you apply then a meaning to it, essentially, you get upset. So it was a reminder today to not be upset, because if you didn't know, you wouldn't get upset.
Yep.
So it's interesting you bring it up, because that's what the Daily Stoic was today. It's essentially that, meaning on purpose.
Well, what I found super interesting as well, just this kind of off topic, but what I found super interesting that every time the Simple Minds get together, the 3 questions are just so interlinked, even though they're 3 different people coming together.
Yeah.
Like it's funny how it works, hey?
So, I don't know. It looks like a lot of silence. But, I'll go. I had 2 reactions.
Yep.
One was, that's really stoic in terms of trying to get rid of just not attaching any significance to meaning of anything. But then my personal one was, well, actually, I use meaning for motivation, because if it doesn't mean anything to me, why, well, how am I living? How am I getting any emotion? How am I getting any joy, any sadness? And I think there's definitely a fine line of not reading into too much and not attaching so much purpose to meaning, which you can protect yourself and also keep yourself even keeled. But for me, a life without meaning, so I think of a life without meaning, and I think of a pretty boring and lackluster existence. So that's where I went to initially. But
Can I just follow that track?
Yeah.
This is not where you went after, but the initial thought I had. So you said, "What is the purpose of meaning?" And I actually went straight to the level of like evolution. So
I
for
thought
me,
of Sapiens as well.
I haven't read Sapiens, but off the back of what you've said, to me, I feel as humans, we've got a brain that's capable and a system that allows us to put meaning behind things. And without that meaning, like you said, a life without meaning is a life not worth living. I think we've been inbuilt and designed in the way that we can push technology, innovation, things forward because we want to have meaning. We're not just living, a meaningless life. And that's not necessarily correct because these are important things too. But a meaningless life is that we're just eating and sleeping and surviving, which a lot of animals live. But to me, the three words you said, the purpose of meaning, I think that is actually something that's inbuilt within us to drive us forward as a civilization.
I think that's what differentiates us from animals, I suppose. That's what humans can apply meaning to anything.
It's a motivator, right?
Yeah.
So picking up on that track, Sapiens talks a lot about in order for communities to exist above a certain number, you have to have stories and meaning associated to just.
I'm going to read that book.
Yeah,
For people to
fictional
come
things,
together,
right? We fabricate meaning in order to bind together larger numbers, and I'll actually just be guessing the number, but it was some number
like
in the teens or maybe less than 10, right?
No, I think it was more.
Or 5.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I can't remember, to be honest, but you needed that. Then I also switched to, you can bring a lot of humility to yourself by just recognizing the meaningless of what we do anyway, right? So you can motivate yourself with meaning, but you can also just remember that actually you are completely insignificant in the grand scheme of everything, right?
A blip on the
you
on the radar.
just don't matter. So you can just play between the two.
But
And
that's where it can get, I think, if you go too far down that track, can have.
Well, we do
that's
matter, right?
bad
Because the community. So
consequences.
it's every one of us. That doesn't mean shit, but we all contribute that little bit, and all of us, I think, try to be the best we can be with what circumstances and what we've learned. But so in the collective, we're able to achieve things. But in the in the individual, it doesn't matter if one of us falls off the wagon. And that, hence, what we've built as a civilization.
Yeah. But I think if you go too far down that track, you can get in negative loops that
As in
are
we're
good.
we're nothing.
Yeah, as in we're
just-
nothing.
yeah.
What's the point? All
Well,
those
we
type
are
of
the
things,
exact opposite
which
as
is
well,
not
though.
true. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
And so there can be a deadly rabbit hole as well.
What I find super fascinating, and this is why I brought it up, is that most of you went to, and it's probably partially because I talked about how I interpret it, and then it probably influenced you guys, but most of you went to a negative of life is meaningless, which is really fascinating because obviously the question that posed was what's the purpose of meaning? So it was just up to interpretation of, like, do you feel it's a positive or a negative, or how you
I don't
use
think
it?
it's meaningless. I think my point was mere survival.
Yeah.
It's not meaningless, but I think we might have used the word meaningless, but I think Michael and I in particular addressed that point,
Yep.
and I think we were suggesting we wanted it to be as meaningful as possible. I
Yep.
think that was where what we were both getting at, right?
Yeah, which is really cool. But so the main reason I bring it up is that for me, not using meaning as a purpose is to be more present. So instead of something bad happening in your day, and then you're making it ruin the rest of your day, you basically go, okay, this didn't actually mean anything, let's put it aside, and then you can get on with your day and be present.
Yeah.
So not sort of being driven by, because we've all got built meaning in our head.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
and you read into stuff.
So looking at something, just letting meaning take over and go, that's that.
Absolutely.
Stepping back, questioning.
Yeah.
That's where philosophy works really well. Thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
Thinking helps you break through certain meanings. You'll come to a different meaning.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's multiple. I think everything has unlimited meaning, really.
Oh, absolutely. And I think being human beings, it's our natural instinct to just put meaning on everything.
All of us have all we know is one thing. Like no human that's ever lived has ever known what anybody else thinks. You've only ever got what you've got, what you perceive.
Yep.
So you're talking about like a speck of dust. We are nothing, but in the other, like the yin yang stuff, we are absolutely everything.
And I mean, it's my instant reaction was stoic as well. In the micro, I think you can get caught up on meaningless stuff which serves no purpose, essentially, right? Whether you get frustrated or annoyed over something that you don't need to be, you're wasting energy on nothing, or you're spending too much time on that thing which you shouldn't, or people gossip about stuff that, what's the point? When there are more purposeful and meaning things you could apply your energy towards. And I think the more you're aware you are of it, the more you can switch out of it. It's kind of like what we've even touched on with this, like someone pulls out in front of you. It is what it is. Don't get frustrated over it. That serves you no purpose.
Yeah.
The meaning of that, there is no meaning. It just was.
Yeah.
That just happened.
Yeah.
Who cares? Or on the other thing, like if you got a business, that client or whatever, it just is. And there's no point trying to go all over the place or whatever. I think it's fascinating because you can kind of go.
Yeah,
you can
You
go
can
anywhere.
go anywhere, absolutely.
And in the micro,
yeah.
I think it's important to acknowledge it, and in the macro, I think as well.
Yeah.
I think when it's a 3-word question that has 6 words.
What was the meaning of
I think it
that?
does leave a fair bit for interpretation.
Oh, good.
It was
Very
purpose of meaning.
Purpose of
Yeah.
meaning.
And then, and touching on that, and I'm really glad you guys are sharing, and this is kind of bringing up stuff in me. Like you were saying, I really like that, how you were saying using stuff that's meaningless and then putting your purpose towards stuff that has a meaning that obviously aligns with your values and stuff. So like you're saying, when someone pulls out in front of you, not using that energy to be like, oh, this guy's an idiot or whatever, and you making that ruin your day, putting that aside and then putting that, I guess, purpose towards something more meaningful that's in your life. So like, working hard for your clients, or does that make sense?
Have you consumed? I guess if you're you do read, but mainly you're video based. I mean, have you consumed much? Do you know much about Stoicism at all?
I've read into it very lightly, but no, I haven't.
Yeah. See, I think you'd find it quite interesting, and there's probably even a couple of audiobooks that could be really useful for you as well. Seneca letters, but on a more probably consumable level, Ryan Holiday. Obstacles the way, but also Seneca letters, for example, is some very short letters, and they're written a bit differently, but you can audio them, and I think based on where you're obviously at and what you're thinking about, you probably find it quite interesting.
The Art of Living. By
that sounds familiar.
The Art of Living is 1 pages of kind of Stoic philosophies and statements, which, because it can go on the opposite. Drinking wine can serve no meaning or purpose, and or the pleasures or the leisures that we get as humans can serve, and it can go either way, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where Stoicism sometimes gets painted with sometimes a negative brush, because it's like not caring, but it's not
Stoic. You don't care.
Yeah, but that's not true either.
It's control, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of awareness.
Yeah.
You not heard that, Marco? You're looking at us.
No, I'm actually tuned out because I'm trying to figure out whether in a sentence have we answered what is the purpose of meaning.
Oh, can you answer that?
Well, I think
Even just that's to summarize, let's just go around and say to wrap this up. Just quick interpretation of how you kind of think that this either can relate in your life, or what you specifically think of the 3 words of purpose of meaning.
Well, I went really high level, so I'll stay there. I think on a real macro level, it's something that we've been blessed with as humans, to be able to put meaning behind things, and I think that's one of the catalysts behind us being able to innovate and create change for ourselves and build a better, different world, which is probably just a gigantic computer, according to Mike, that we're right now sitting in our little pods in the Matrix, whilst we think that we're living a life right now. But that's where I'll stay.
We're going around the table.
Yeah.
I was just having a giggle to myself, because if we're all going to contribute, it's a pretty powerful summary.
Yeah,
I think that...
Too much, we had 3-person summary.
That's right. I think if you can apply awareness to it and question it and sit on it, it can be powerful in your life and your day-to-day. And there's a statement that, happiness is really a byproduct and you can't kind of be there. And I think acknowledging that can help it, your mental state, and be mindful. It's another level of mindfulness. It's kind of in the micro, like we talked about. I've been applying it since I've been introduced to Stoicism, that type of thing. Maybe not aware at the level of challenging that question. So I think if you can sit with the awareness of it, understand either purpose or meaning or purpose, you can go to each way, I believe. I think if you can apply that just in life on 1 or 2 things, it'll change a lot. And I've been doing it. Daily Stoicism helps with it. Just be front of mind.
Yeah.
of that question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I'm with Matt in regards to meaning is to be human. We apply meaning every microsecond of the day in everything we see and everything we do, drinking wine, driving, whatever it is. So, I don't know. It's a hard one. My brain is actually melting right now, I think, trying to think about it. But yeah, meaning is everything. But I think being self-aware and questioning and thinking and learning helps develop the correct meaning in life. Because you don't want to go down the path of, I was going to say rabbit hole, but I was listening to the last podcast and we said it about 8 times.
Yeah,
So
but, I mean, it's a real thing.
it is. But yeah, meaning can, if you go down the negative side of meaning, that's when life can spiral out of control. But if you can learn and keep your values intact and your ethics intact and learn, meaning becomes the correct path. So that's my thoughts.
Can I just test? Did you say that meaning was purposeless?
No.
No.
I said, what's the purpose of meaning?
No, I know, but your then one sentence for it was
Yeah.
it's purposeless.
Oh, maybe. In I'd say in aspects of my life, yeah.
Okay. So my one sentence answer is that the purpose of meaning is the way that we need it in order to interpret the world.
Absolutely.
That's it.
No doubt about that, yeah.
And so then you can go down where Justin went, which was how much meaning do you attach to certain things and being mindful about how much you give it. But in essence, as a society, so this agrees with Matt and Michael, you need meaning in order to make sense of the world. What does red light mean? Well, for our culture, it means stop, right? So we can function as a society at that level without crashing because the red has a meaning of stop. And then you just add that infinite layers. So-and-so didn't text back. What does that mean? You start spinning out of control into that.
Yeah.
That's where you start. That's just wasted energy. But we need meaning. So I fundamentally disagree with your opening statement.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's
But
good.
yeah.
Fight.
Yeah.
But
Need
then
meaning.
it's just how you attack it, right? Because I think the other
Yeah.
point was you were saying stop thinking and like dwelling on little shit that's coming at me or what that
absolutely.
might mean.
Yeah.
So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I just think it really it all changes depending on what context you want to give those 3 words.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's where I was going as well.
Andrew,
Great.
to finish off with the meaning stuff, what's...
Oh, yeah, the big thing for me is just about presents. Like, I use
I like
it.
presents. Dude.
Christmas
So, coming today.
Christmas
have you brought any presents? You know,
The gift
you're
of me
really
being
great.
here.
You're a great guest, but you know we do
Gift
like
of your presence.
Yeah, we're just being present. So understand that, like, when I'm doing something, I like Justin said, I question it. So, you know, if I'm having a bad day, I question it. I go, why am I having a bad day? What meaning have I put on why I'm in this mood?
Yeah.
And then basically understand that, and then basically go, okay, is this serving me in a good way or a bad way? And then
Yeah.
moving on from that.
Well, that's where you go both levels. Like Marco said, or we've all said, we have meaning,
Yeah.
acknowledge it,
Yeah.
and then use it.
Use it for the power of good.
Yeah. And use it whether, depending on what motivates you, an obliger or a questioner.
And a big thing for me as well is understanding that, like, going, okay, this doesn't mean anything to me, but then make sure it aligns with your values and kind of that you actually listen to, like, your emotions and, like, your body and all this stuff. Because a lot of the times, like, when I first started, like, I started getting tired lots, and I was like, well, the meaning is that my body's trying to tell me I'm tired, and I'm not actually tired, it's just the meaning and all this. I got down this, like, infinite loop.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, hang on, my body's actually physically telling me that I'm tired and I need to listen to that. It's obviously there is a meaning there, but it's like, it's not a negative or a positive. It's just you have to interpret things how you actually want to, I
You
guess.
made a brilliant point there about other people's meaning as well, not trying to put yourself in that position and understanding what somebody else's meaning may be on a specific subject, which is really important.
Yeah. And like, realistically, you don't know as well. That's what's really fascinating about it. Is that like
assumption, right?
yeah, like you're saying, you go back and this, the guy cuts you off, and you're like, well, this guy's an idiot. Maybe, you know, I don't know why I always go to negatives when I do examples, but yeah, maybe his wife's in hospital and he's quickly racing there, and you get upset with him, but you don't actually know what's going on.
Maybe he's an idiot. That
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
absolutely. Maybe he is actually an idiot, but
Maybe
you
he's an
don't-
idiot whose wife is in hospital. and it
Absolutely,
could be a
but
whole combination
and
of
you don't
things.
know it. And you can't, unless you actually like physically go and talk to them about it, but you actually don't know. And that's why I think to round this off, the big thing for me is communication. So to understand meaning and to put meaning aside is having a really good sense of communication. So if something comes up, I say if Justin, I thought Justin was angry at me, I'd be like, hey Justin, are you actually angry at me? And he can either say, yeah, I am because of this, and then we can kind of work on that, or he's like, no, it's just, I know, I just had a bad morning, or someone cut me off in traffic.
What's the
I
meaning?
really felt like we were going to get a 3-word question, but we got a 6-word question.
We did, that's right. Well, way to wrap up the end of the session. That went pretty deep.
Told you.
At the end there.
That was a.
And I think we could have gotten infinite loops. That is episode 11.
And what
Thanks
was
for
the meaning
tuning
of
in.
it?
Thanks
What
for
was the
coming,
meaning of
Andrew.
it
That's
all?
all right. Thanks for having me,
coming.
guys.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
See you next time.
I was waiting for it.
Nice
It
one.
didn't happen.
Nah, I wasn't going to do it today.
Champagne.
Champagne.
Come on, mate. Do it now. We'll come in.
Champagne.